Morning, another day, another road test. Today we're doing on the Microsoft Surface Duo 2 and we're heading to Dumbo, which is a neighborhood here in Brooklyn that stands for Down Under Manhattan Bridge Overpass. I've done some videos there in the past. If you're curious about the neighborhood, I'll leave those below for you to check out. But today we're heading there because Fisher realized that there's a new library that was just built there, and we kind of want to go check that out. So let's hop on the ferry, head to Dumbo, and we'll talk about some of the features that I like and don't like on the Surface Duo 2, as well as test out the camera and battery.
Please don't fall off. Is that the Microsoft Surface Duo?
2.
Oh, they do it too.
Yeah, it's different.
Well, then that must be good.
It's better. We're actually heading to a library for the sheer fact that the phone, the Duo 2, folds kind of like a book. We once actually did a video together where we went on a whole pizza crawl just because we were doing a video on a folding phone, and you could fold the pizza like you can the phone. No one said these were strong correlations. This seems like a very bad idea.
Hey, this is a great idea. It's an inspired moment. What was I going to say?
Bad idea.
Oh, right.
Here's that famous shot that everybody takes here in Dumbo. That you can never actually take without anyone else in it because everybody's taking the shot. But it is a cool shot, I get it. Coffee. Check. And this is a place called Usagi, which means rabbit in Japanese. It also has another symbol behind that word called to, which means with or together. But apparently that's silent in the name. And honestly, it's just a beautiful, minimalistic, very calming space that's also a bookstore, a coffee shop, also does tea, and it's also an art gallery. And speaking of art and design, let's talk about some of the differences between the Duo 2 and the Duo 1 in terms of design. So we still have the same dual screen design, but there's been a few tweaks. Firstly, we have a stronger hinge. Now the Duo 1 was pretty strong. This is just more strong. You can position it in any position and it will stay there. Then we have glass on the outside that actually curves slightly at the end, which is just kind of a nice touch, along with this new obsidian color, which is black, that you can choose instead of just glacier, which is silver. Now the glass on the screen is also curved now too, in an effort to make the gap in between the two screens feel a bit smaller, since the screen now runs all the way to the edge and a little over. And honestly, it does a good job of that, but there is still a gap, which we'll discuss how that works a bit later. The bezels at the top and bottom of the screen are also slightly smaller now, and the fingerprint sensor has been integrated into the power button, and it works well. You'll also notice the fact that we have actual cameras on the back compared to the just one front-facing camera of the last model. We'll talk about those later as well. But because of that, the device no longer folds all the way back. Doing so feels a little weird, honestly, kind of like you're holding a doorstop. You'll still do it, because in some senses it works, but it feels a little more awkward than last time, obviously. And of course, the trade-off being that you have proper cameras. So probably worth it.
I don't even know what this is.
Now this is a brand new branch of the Brooklyn Public Library that opened last week. It's the 60th branch for the Brooklyn Public Library system. It's also the first new branch since 1983, and the first library ever in Dumbo. And since it is so new, they built it with more than just books in mind. There are separate areas for teens to study, an area for children and families, and it kind of has the vibe of like a co-working location a little bit.
DVDs. What?
Now when using the Duo 2 in public, a lot of times people do equate it to looking like a book. And obviously the device is meant to be used with both screens. And again, that slightly awkward feeling of using it folded back now kind of just pushes you to do so even more. The screens on the Duo 2 are now both 90 Hz displays, so they refresh up to 90 times a second, compared to most phones 60 Hz, which just means that animations, scrolling, and gaming that supports it will feel smoother. Now, I've said this before about other phones with high refresh rates. It's a subtle feature, but when you try to go to a device that doesn't have a high refresh rate after, you notice. Now, Microsoft did a good job actually of keeping the two displays in sync, so there's no lag between them, thankfully. And we have some pretty intuitive, for the most part, ways of getting apps to work on either or both. Now, each display is a 5.8-inch 3x2 aspect display that is technically an 8.3-inch canvas when opened. Whenever you open something on one display, the Microsoft Launcher will move everything on your home screen over to the other display, and this definitely feels smoother and works better than the original Duo did. You can swipe up from the bottom of any app while open and fling it over to the other display, or even do so in the multitasking view. Swiping to the other display moves it there, while swiping away from the other display dismisses it. You can also hold the app over the gap to get it to span across the two screens. And it's here where you realize how this design difference changes the way you use this device versus, say, a Galaxy Z Fold. Most of the apps you use will have no idea what to do with this form factor, so you'll either get it to spread across and have a yes, smaller but still jarring gap, or some apps even get confused by the odd aspect ratio of the screen and automatically rotate 90 degrees, thinking you must clearly be using your phone sideways since the width versus length is way too much. The exception to this, just as before, is using Microsoft's own apps, like Outlook, which does a great job of utilizing both screens, as does Teams. We also have TikTok, Waze, and Kindle that all use the dual screens well. Now, personally, I just wish other apps had a way of doing this, as I feel that would just make a huge difference in using the device, but developers simply won't spend the time doing this for such a niche device, except those with a relationship with Microsoft, or maybe owe them a favor. Even Amazon with the Kindle app only took the time to make the book itself span across the two pages, which is great and makes this again a great book substitute. But the rest of the app doesn't, because I would imagine that would have taken a lot more work. The only way that this would truly work well is if Google finally put in a behavior to automatically adjust for dual screens, like they say they're going to do with folding displays, but haven't done much with yet either. And dual screens is a lot harder for an app to deal with than just defaulting to a giant display and stretching the content. So instead, you end up using each display as its own device almost, kind of like dual monitors. And in a lot of ways, that is actually really useful. You can also drag and drop any app onto another one on the home screen to get the choice to either create a folder like normal, but also dual launch the apps. So things you use a lot together can launch at once. For example, I sometimes have two messaging apps open at once, or a browser and a note app for research, or even two food apps at the same time when I'm being real nerdy about where I want to eat. You can multitask when the time comes in a unique way that honestly kind of feels better than the software the large foldables use to do this for some reason.
See, it's like a book. Okay, we got the shot. Let's go.
So while we were at the library, the phone died at about 4:10 p.m. after taking it off the charger at 9 a.m. this morning. Here's my screen on time and my usage for anyone who's curious about that. The device was actually at 2%, and I went to go get the screen grab and it died. So I had to charge it up a little bit to get this. But today is a tough day. I'm doing a rear wheel test as always. There's a lot of camera usage, etc. So it's not a normal day, frankly. But here is my screen on time and my usage for another much more normal day, so you can compare the two. Now we're gonna let the device charge back up and head to the next spot.
Cheers, friend.
Cheers, bud.
Looks like fun, but it's hard.
So this archway underneath the Manhattan Bridge was used by the Department of Transportation for storing scrap metal for decades. But they finally listened to the people of the neighborhood and returned it as a public space under the DOT Plaza program. And now there's live music that happens under here. On the weekends, there's like food vendors where you can get lunch for all of the like businesses that are around here. And on certain weekdays, like today, it's a good place to stop and get a beer, maybe play some cornhole. And while we're here, let's talk a little bit about the cameras. So first, the front camera has been improved both for photos, as you can see here, but also for video, as you can see and hear now on both of the two Duos. Now in the back we have those cameras, but we also have a revamped camera app. The app is a lot snappier than the old one, which is great, and the camera app now shows your photos on the left display as you take them, while the viewfinder is on the right. Firstly, be careful what's in your camera roll when you first open your camera on this phone now. But the reason it does this is because, thanks to the form factor, you have to take photos with both screens open now, which is a little awkward, but it is what it is. And I imagine Microsoft probably felt they needed to figure out a useful way to utilize the second screen because of that. Now for me, reviewing photos is not something I need to see right away on a large screen next to the screen I'm taking them. It's a little distracting, in my opinion, but it is more useful than just having a home screen next to it, for sure. Now you can also go into settings and change that so that the camera app opens on one display by default instead of the two by default. And you can also decide for any other app on the phone if it'll open automatically spanned across both displays, which is actually a useful new setting. As for the cameras, you can control them with this app, and we have the familiar 3-button layout over the shutter button that we're used to from other devices now, and you can tap the 0.5x button to get to the ultra-wide camera, the 1x for the main camera, and the 2x for the telephoto. We also have an automatic night mode built in with a moon icon that turns yellow when night mode is about to be used, and you can tap that to disable it if you want. There's also now a portrait mode that you can adjust the bokeh for using the icon at the top left, as well as use it on both the main and the telephoto cameras. And for video, we can shoot up to 4K at 60 FPS on the main and telephoto cameras, and 4K 30 on the ultra-wide and front-facing camera. So this is a restaurant called Celestine, and between the wood-fired oven and the giant floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the Manhattan Bridge, has no shortage of ambiance. It's a Mediterranean-inspired restaurant that, despite its prime location and vistas, has at least more of a local vibe than some of the other places around here with similar views that can almost feel like nightclubs. Now, something Fisher and I both did when we first saw the Duo 2 at a demo was completely not realize that there was a case on the unit that we were looking at. Now that case is not just super thin, it also has a very strong magnet in it to allow you to store the optional Surface Slim Pen 2, as well as charge it from the phone through the case, which is kind of clever. Now in the original Duo video, I showed you that the pen could attach to the outside, but apparently that was an accident just because of the placement of some of the magnets in the housing. And it didn't really work very well in that video, as soon as you put it in your pocket, the pen would just fall off. Again, wasn't intended. Now though, the pen stays pretty solidly stuck, which is great. And using it in OneNote, for example, is responsive. And I personally love that the back of the Surface Pen always doubles as an eraser, which others don't. The pen does, however, cost an extra $129, which isn't cheap. And the case is another $40. So make sure that it's something that you'll truly use before you invest in that. Also, it's weird to me that the case covers one side of the phone, but then the other side just has these tiny bumpers and it doesn't cover the back at all. Now the new Duo 2 also has 5G support and millimeter wave as well here in the States, along with Sub-6, so it'll work on all of the various 5G networks available here in the US. You can check out my video at the link below on the difference in all of those 5Gs if you're curious. And we have a 4,449 milliamp battery compared to the 3,577 milliamp one in the old Duo, as well as slightly faster charging at 23 watts versus the 18 watts, which is just a bit helpful considering the larger battery will otherwise take longer to fill. This is a bar called Superfine, and I think the last time I was here was 8 years ago. And we ended up wandering in tonight, and it turns out it's jazz night.
You're gonna get some kiss.
this is their first live jazz session since March of 2020. Love it. Honestly, I'm kind of a sucker for a standing bass. And it turns out actually that the guy who is playing the standing bass tonight is in his 90s. Bless that man. All right, let's talk about the software experience. Firstly, we have the same ability from Xbox where certain games can use the bottom screen as a controller, which is pretty cool actually. And that number of games has grown and is now at 150 plus, according to Microsoft. There's also a new glance bar, it's called, which takes advantage of that curved display and will show a notification light in the gap when the phone is closed, which is a nice touch. It also will show a counter and an icon for missed phone calls and messages, but only RCS and SMS, not third-party apps. As well as show you the battery level when low, charging level when charging, volume level when you're playing media, as well as the time. Now you do have to push the power button though to get it to show these, and it's not just always on like say the Z Flip 3 can do on its cover display if you turn it on, but like I said, it's a nice touch. Now for the most part, the experience of swiping things around and multitasking, etc. is all much smoother than it was on the Surface Duo, for sure. But there is still something off. Now, every reviewer that I spoke to that was testing the last Duo all said the same thing about typing being a pain. And honestly, here, it's better, for sure, but it's still frustrating. Essentially, it feels like there's some sort of like touch input lag, maybe? I'm not sure. You only notice it occasionally when using the device for the most part, but when you type, you notice it more, to the point where you miss letters in your words. And I imagine this simply is because typing is the thing you do that has the most touch inputs in a very quick succession, so it becomes more apparent when things aren't exactly right. Now, I really wish that I could show you this in like a controlled, objective way, but I don't really know how to do that. So all I could do in an effort to make sure it wasn't just me was I adjusted every typing setting that I could, as well as switched keyboards, etc. And then I asked other reviewers again if they were also having the same issue, and again, they all said that they were. Now, is it better than the last one? For sure, but it still drives me a little nuts. If anyone out there ends up buying a Surface Duo 2 or has a Surface Duo, let me know in the comments if you also noticed this and if you found a way around it if you have. Appreciate it. Okay, calling it a night. I'm honestly very curious about this device. I love the idea that it is different and that in some use cases it is helpful, but I do wish the software was better. And I'm honestly I'm not really sure who it's for. So I would love to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of the Duo 2. If you were actually thinking about buying one, why do you like it? Why would you not buy one? Please let me know. Always appreciate hearing from you guys. If you like this video, please thumbs up it or share it. It's greatly appreciated. Check out the rest of the channel. If you like what you see there, please subscribe and ding the bell next to the word subscribe so you get notified when I do new videos. Also, if you want, you can check out Fisher's video when that's ready at the link below. Also, check me out on Instagram. I do a lot of behind the scenes stuff there, so give me a follow there as well. And I'll also leave a link below to the best price that I can find on this device, as well as links to all the places that we visited. As always though, regardless, thanks for watching.
Hey Fisher, last time I was filming in this neighborhood, it was on a pair of noise-canceling headphones, because this is apparently the loudest neighborhood by noise complaints in all of New York City. Think that was a good idea today? What?
New rule, we never film in Dumbo ever again. Such a loud neighborhood.
Fisher is one of the few people I've ever met that does not like dumplings.
Got no use for him. No call for that.
They're fantastic in every culture. Anyway,
in
this culture, Mediterranean food, we have Monty, which is, they're essentially dumplings. So, these are short rib, Monty. Fisher's gonna try one. Terrible, you hate it.
That's criminally good. I love that.
There is a dumpling he likes.
I've always said dumplings are among my favorite foods. This place does it well.
We converted him. Wow. One dumpling. Wow.